What I see holding most people back from achieving their ideal lifestyle, getting that dream life, isn't them not knowing where they want to go, but them not being able to connect that destination to where they are now. You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deep reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into the science and spirit of happy, a logical path to soul. G'day, y'all! Welcome back. Oh, I'm so excited to be talking about how to not be like your parents. And if you're cringing a little bit watching this, thinking, I really don't want my parents to find out that I'm watching this because they're great, but I have a few things that I would like to not repeat. I just want to tell you again, if you haven't watched the previous episodes, that this is totally natural. Okay, we're doing something evolutionary here by trying to better our parents, trying to be more, trying to progress, trying to have a better life. So this is not to diss our parents, unless you are fully aware that your parents were wanting in parenting skills, and you definitely do not want to be like them for very good reasons. Then guess what? You have the exact same path that anybody else does too. I've been on both sides of this coin, and I know for a fact that anybody getting to big goals needs to go through the same steps. And if they are big goals to you, like if they're far from where you're at and you've had any trouble whatsoever getting to them, there's probably something parental, something from childhood that we need to address. So we're in the mindset district, what I call district right now. I explained briefly that the approach to getting to big goals is holistic if you want it to be sustainable and easier. If you don't want to muscle your way through it and white knuckle through it, then you really need to get into alignment, which requires a holistic approach. So I estimate my methods from the results that my students get to be 10 times more effective than the leading personal development methods. That is probably because of how much more information I cover, how many more crucial steps that people who are getting to big goals do intuitively, how I make that explicit and explain it linearly. I think that's really, really unique. And also that, this holistic focus is just, it's almost entirely missing from the conversation. This season, I'm walking you through the 8 steps, or what I call the 8 personal powers that you need to develop to get to big goals, to change how you were written, the shape that you were molded into by your experiences up to this point. These personal powers and my strategy will put you into the carver's seat. So you can model your life in the image of the person that you really align with, that you truly are. So the personal powers all belong to districts. So we cover the way that we do things holistically is we cover all the layers of you. So there's mind, heart, spirit, and body. So we start in the mind for a lot of reasons that I go into in my courses and my membership. But we start in the mind. I'll probably discuss it a bit in the book too. But for now, we start in the mind because it's the first step. just take it as that. So last time we were talking about the personal power of clarity. And this time we're talking about the personal power of connection. And what I mean is probably not what you're thinking when I say connection. So listen up. Have you ever known someone who knows all the things, right? They know all the things. They understand exactly what they need to do. They understand all of their problems, but they have a really hard time doing the things, or they have a really hard time embodying all of that knowledge, like actually being that person, the person that has gone to therapy for years and years and years and knows every single one of their problems, every single one of their coping mechanisms, but can't seem to embody a different reality. So that's what clarity is without connection. So the personal powers are all individual steps, Step 1, clarity. Step 2, connection. However, they all feed into and bleed into one another. This is why you can't just grab clarity. I want this, and this is where I'm at, right? That person that's been in therapy for, decades who knows all their problems and knows all their coping mechanisms and knows all their traumas and knows all the things, but can't seem to move forward. They're missing all of the other steps. They're missing being in alignment in all of the other ways with all of the other personal powers. So while each personal power is important on its own, you can't just jump to doing the things. Doing the things belongs to the last personal powers that I even discuss, right? So there's a whole body of necessary personal development, healing, growing, strengthening that you have to go through before you can go from, knowing to doing. So that person, that's been in therapy for years and knows all of their traumas, knows all their coping mechanisms, knows all the things that they're up against, maybe even knows exactly what they need to do to get over them, but can't do them, probably has other personal powers, other layers of themselves that are in misalignment. And what happens is that one personal power, you can white knuckle your way through and force yourself to do the things that you need to do. And you can see some results, but they're not sustainable. You'll have to continuously white knuckle through. That's what happens when we reach burnout. And it's definitely not easy. It's really, really difficult. And you probably will actually be harming some of the other personal powers and some of the other layers in the process, because each one of these personal powers is linked to one another. Each one of them feeds into the other, either making it easier as you develop the personal powers as you go along. It gets easier and easier and easier because they piggyback upon one another and give you like exponentially more strength to get to the places that you want to go, or they detract from, right? So misalignments in other places will keep that person stuck in that overthinking, over-intellectualizing everything, living in their head with clarity and without, experiencing fulfillment. So clarity definitely breeds into connection. Clarity about who I am and what I want is like a plot on a graph, right? It's like a data point. But the data points don't start to make any sense until I connect them. They don't start to tell a story. They're not usable until we start to connect them together to get a broader picture of the whole scenario. So clarity is, I want a 7-figure income. Clarity is, I want to wake up on an estate with a running home farm. Clarity is, I want so much space and resources that my children can actually live intergenerationally with their children together with me on my property. Now we're starting to feed into connection when I start to talk about how that's going to affect my life. My kids can live on this estate with me. I can be, this involved grandparent, etc. Clarity is the knowing what, who, where. So clarity is what? Seven-figure income. Who? Me and my family. Where? On our estate, right? But connection is the why and the how. So I talked about the egocentric person who can't learn in the last episode. So we have this egocentric person who can't learn because they're always right. In their minds, their clarity, personal power, their mindset power is connected to being right. It's honed in on being right. And then on the other side, the rock star rocket scientist that I was talking about in the last episode is shining brightly in their wisdom that they have gathered from their experiences that aligns with their purpose, their interests, what drives them, their gifts that they're here to bring. And then there's somebody in between. And this is the person that is locked in that analysis paralysis. This is the person who is knowing all the things they need to do, but not able to take the steps forward to actually do them. Or the person who actually uses all of this knowledge that they've gathered to excuse their poor behavior. So it's the person who knows all the things. They know, who they are, where they've been, what they're up against, and it doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve them. It doesn't bring them anything. They don't change. So it's the person that are aware of their trauma, but then uses that trauma, uses that story, that narrative, that knowing, that clarity to then reinforce coping mechanisms with that knowledge. Well, this is why. This is why I feel depressed. This is why I have anxiety. This is why I can't lead a normal life. I can't be like you. Oh, you can be happy. That's fine. But not me. Because of the clarity, right? So they've made connections, but it's like to the past, not to the future. They're not real connections. That's when we get into what I call the reality IQ dents and divots and deficits. So the person who realizes that they were raised in a disadvantaged home, but uses that knowledge to excuse them not trying, right? Or somebody who understands that the economy isn't rigged fairly, and uses that knowledge to say, well, I can't do anything, about my financial state because, the economy it's not rigged in my favor. The first female self-made millionaire in the US of A was a Black woman. And she was a Black woman in a Black business selling to Black people. So, in her case and in a lot of our cases, if you're a woman in the economy, yeah, sure, you can't maybe go the white male route and become, a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It's not likely, it's not as likely for you to be able to do that as, a white man. However, there's all kinds of other opportunities because you're a woman. I would gander that the majority of people making a lot of money through like influencer means online are probably women because we're good at making connections. So we can see that as an opportunity, which is an objective perspective, or we can use that clarity to help reinforce the negative impact, the destructive impact that our parents and our parental experiences and childhood had on us. And, this isn't to speak to inequities, but to the connection step. I'm not trying to even weigh in on, the state of the economy or anything. But what I'm saying that the connection step leads to individual solutions to the problems that you face. I'm talking about taking that responsibility for betterment upon yourself, regardless of what kind of crappy situation you genuinely have found yourself in. I always tell myself when I'm really getting down on whatever, because I've faced major traumas, I've faced all kinds of things that would have pretty much, foretold me being just a mess in life. And, when I'm up against that kind of like self-defeating feelings, I always tell myself, like, if Oprah can do it, like, what the hell am I complaining about? Like, honestly, what is any of us even complaining about? And her story is not mine to tell, but if you read into like what Oprah's childhood was like, what her early career was like, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if Oprah can do it, so can I. If Oprah can do it, then like nobody else has anything to complain about, pretty much. Or we do have things to complain about, but we don't have reasons that we can't rise to the level that we desire. So we're speaking on an individual level, okay? I believe in fairness above all else. I believe in fairness above all other things. But if fairness were a point on my clarity graph, if that was a data point on my clarity graph, then I then to make connections to the next steps. So if unfairness was a plot on my graph, it is what it is. I'm living in an unfair world. Then how do I get to point B without fairness? How do I get to point B from this unfairness data point? Or how do I get to the point that I want to be at without having the fairness data point plotted on my graph? Now, I teach personal empowerment and radical responsibility. I'm talking about you getting better from wherever you are standing and getting to the place that you want to go because you figured out a way. And I'm going to show you how. The very first step to that is getting clear about you, that clarity step. But connection is learning how to communicate that. Oprah didn't rock up and expect everybody to know what she wanted. She was going for what she wanted and she was communicating it to the people around her, as well as who to talk to. Okay? Successful people, they're not just, talking to random people on the street and expecting them to give them, appropriate feedback that's going to help them on their journey. Connection is knowing where to get information from, or where from to ignore messaging and information. That person who's saying, you can't do that because. Connection is finding out how other people have done it. If you've got some super, super, super unique purpose, I think that mine is pretty unique. I don't see the reason I created the methodology that I created and the strategy that I created, because I couldn't find it. I searched and searched and searched and searched and searched, and there was just this massive hole in the strategy of going from, not having the things that you want to having them. There was a massive hole, and I had to figure it out myself. And luckily, I also wrote it down all along the way. But even if your purpose is so unique, okay, nobody understood the path. Well, I was able to figure out little bits that lots of different people knew, little bits of information from lots of different areas, and put them together and experiment with them and make connections. So even if there's not a single person who did exactly what you want to do. There's probably lots of people who achieved steps along the way. And there's lots of people that you can look to for information about different things. Connection is wondering or even asking, what they think about what you're doing or how you're doing it or where you should be getting your information from, etc. Like what their feedback for you would be, getting their insights. Okay, so connection is a lot to do with seeking objectivity. Okay, so I told you this story last week about I rented to somebody for the first time, and it was a nightmare. This gentleman made it into a nightmare, and the difference between him not seeking that clarity, right? He had data points. He mapped data points. There was a repair that was being done that at that point in time was not done. There was, this little mishap, whatever. He had collected, these data points and outright refused to seek objectivity. And what can happen if we come from a particularly troublesome past is that these little data points can trigger us. So if something's not going right for us, it can trigger us. And believe me, going through this situation with him, just like trauma dumping all over us, believe me, okay, at the ends of those conversations with him, I was immediately triggered into feeling like I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. Like, I understand this knee-jerk reaction, okay? And we don't have control over that. So I'm not getting down on this man for, having this traumatic past, obviously, and seeing that things weren't working out the way that he wanted them to, and all of a sudden being very scared that we were going to take advantage of him, that we were going to exploit him because he's experienced that before. That's not the problem, okay? I mean, it is a problem. We do need to address it, but the problem really starts to happen when we don't start to make connection. So when I immediately started feeling, getting off these conversations from him, just like being really, explosive, and coming from that background, being triggered into feeling like powerless and like I was going to be the victim of, whatever, and making that me feel so not worthy of the life that I want. I was actually trying to make decisions for my life that would have not gone forward. I was actually thinking, oh, we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that in completely unrelated areas in business, just because of all of a sudden my self-worth was just, dwindling and just drying up like a little raisin. This person had just like sucked all of the juice out of me. But I realized, like, hey, wait, I started thinking this when I got off the phone with this person. I started thinking this after I had to drop that email to that person. So I was able to seek connection. I was able to talk to my husband about it, like, hey, am I actually fearful now because this person has triggered, feelings of like low self-worth and like I deserve to be treated this way, the way that they were treating me. And therefore, it's connected to all of these other things. Like, I don't deserve to move forward in my life. I don't deserve to have big goals. I don't deserve to make big moves. And even though that didn't take the feeling away, it started the process of making the connections to seek objectivity. Is this objectively true? And the reason that man now doesn't even have a place to live, and has had losses on many different accounts because of his behavior, he refused to seek connection. So he had clarity, this window needs to be replaced. He refused to seek the connection. Okay, wait, don't freak out. Like, people aren't trying to like exploit you and make you live in a house that has a window that the seal is broken on. Like they're already doing that. They were already replacing this before you even moved in. These are not bad people. They're not trying to exploit you or seeking clarity with us. Hey, this little mishap happened. Was this intentional? Like, are you gonna try and, screw me over or not? Or is this safe? I'm feeling unsafe. Am I unsafe? So reality IQ dent, the triggered reaction, the clarity point on your graph that says, people can be cruel to me. I've experienced it before. That's not something that we need to erase, but it's something that we need to connect to other things. So seeking that connection can be the way that you can mitigate all kinds of different mental health challenges. So we're still in mindset. I'm not talking about taking action in the physical. I'm not talking about doing the things that you have figured out you need to do. I mean, that's part of it, absolutely. And that happens down the road. Or, I mean, it can happen in an instant too. Obviously, people who are like getting to their big goals are doing these things in an instant. But if we're not, then we need to take the steps towards that. So I'm not talking about motion in the physical, but seeking connection really is a motion. Seeking connection is a motion in the mind. It's data point, something's happened, right? And then seeking movement to connect that to other things, to take a broader view, to gain actual wisdom. So this is why change is so hard, because we don't get all the steps. So in personal and professional development, I pretty much always get the decide, right? You're going to decide, you're going to seek clarity, right? And then the do. So we decide, we figure out where we want to go, and then we do. Maybe we figure out the steps that we need to take, but the steps that we need to take are never the full steps that we need to take. It's just the do steps. So we figure out where we want to go, and then we figure out the do steps. And then we got to go from clarity to the do steps, which are the last personal powers. So we go from like the first personal powers to the last personal powers, skipping all of the in between. And this is why 95% of people fail across a lot of different data sets for different kinds of goals. 95% seems to be a recurring number, that 5% of people do achieve these big goals like weight loss. And then 95% of people fail. So let's talk about worst case scenario, okay? You are born into financial chaos, because we're talking about finances as an example in this, but it really doesn't matter, okay? This is pertinent whether we're talking about your health. I use these exact same steps to help people lose weight. That's where I get the 10 times more efficacy number estimation. It can be for relationships. Okay, like my whole reason for finding out all of this information was because I wanted a better family life, because I wanted to be a better parent, essentially, and to have, a happy like marriage and family dynamic. And now that I've walked into that comfortably, and now I'm walking in that comfortably, I'm married with a little beautiful baby boy whom I adore. Now it's being used for finances, to grow my financial well-being, to grow my into big financial goals. So this can be used for whatever, like anything that is a big goal. This is absolutely the way. So we're talking about finances in this one. As an example, I'll use different examples as we go, but the worst case scenario, you're born into financial chaos, okay? You had a traumatic childhood, you were born into abject poverty, and it's an unfair system, okay? Like you're a woman or a person of color in the US of A, and Clarity for that person is, this happened to me. I didn't get what I needed. I got a load of ish instead of what I needed. The system doesn't favor me. I want something different. I want something beautiful. So connection is, okay, if I don't change this, what happens? Well, my kids will experience blank. I will experience blank. What happened is wrong. What's happening is wrong. How do I change it? What do I need? And who has the insight, info, and influence I need to get there? So no one owes anyone else anything at all. Even our legal system is actually a contract that we enter. Although we're born into it, it's still, the idea behind it is a contract that our forefathers, and they were forefathers because it was men who made these decisions back in the day, but our forefathers actually decided to enter. So the egocentric person can't take any information in. They can't take any insights in because they already think that they're right. They can't actually connect with anybody else and figure out what is actually right. The analysis paralysis person can't move into alignment. They can't take the necessary steps forward in all of the other personal powers because there's like a lack of real visceral responsibility being taken there. And honestly, this is I don't mean to get down on this person because like I was this person for a long time. I mean, I still have to move myself into the other districts and into the other personal powers from, being so heady and understanding things so well to really living it. But the reason that it's so difficult to do that is not because, the analysis paralysis person just sucks and they don't really get it. It's like they're not really getting it because it's not being explained properly. So this is not a dig. I hate that because like that was always thrown at me when I was growing up. You aren't taking any responsibility, right? And anyways, that's a discussion for another time. But when I'm saying that the analysis paralysis person isn't taking responsibility, I more mean they don't know how. They don't know how to take responsibility because obviously they're trying, right? I mean, mostly. I'm gonna say you're trying because you're watching this if you're the analysis paralysis person. But the rock star realizes every moment is an opportunity to advance. They realize that no one owes them anything. However, there are, a countless number of people around that can help them, a countless number of situations that can help them, but it's up to them to go out and do it, right? So remember I was talking about the aerospace engineers, the rocket scientists in my last couple episodes. I also talked about the people that I worked with, sitting on the Senate and serving on all these committees at my university and being mentored by really, really like rock star PhDs. I forgot when I was talking about that, I actually worked in the research and scholarly activities office as well. So I actually put together like conferences for academic presenters and stuff, like academic conferences and stuff. So within the office itself, especially the head of the office was just brilliant. And then all of these researchers that we'd bring in were also just brilliant. All of these people, these incredible minds in upper admin, and even some people in organized activism I've met and researchers are just absolutely just brilliant, shining minds. I wouldn't be here. I talked about them seeking clarity constantly, and that is absolutely what they do. These brilliant, brilliant people and musicians and artists, everybody that's like shining brightly in their field is constantly seeking clarity. However, I wouldn't be here to speak about them. I wouldn't be here to speak about their constant clarity seeking if they weren't also constantly making connection, consistently like seeking connection, because not only is that part of clarity, but that's how everybody else gets to see your beautiful shining self. So clarity is kind of a rungs on the ladder. Really, really, really necessary. But connection are the rails. We don't often think about the rails being that important in a ladder. We always talk about, and I talk about rungs on a ladder, and habits being steps, like rungs on a ladder climbing towards your goals. But the rails are what puts it all together. So we're going to talk about more of the rungs on the ladders and more of the devices that you need to develop in order to get to big goals, and not just repeat what your parents handed off to you. In the following episodes, we're going to go into the next layer or district of the heart in the next episode and talk about the next personal powers of the heart. And if you want to read more about this topic, do some exercises on this topic and all of the rest of the personal powers, and read about the entire step-by-step process, I have written a book that you can purchase. I've priced it really competitively because I want it to be in as many hands as possible. So you can get that linked wherever the links are that you are consuming this podcast. And I hope you really enjoy it. I enjoyed writing it. So until next week, g'day, y'all.